Okay, hi, welcome back from your break. This is Dr. Matthew J. Traum again. Sorry, normally I like to stop my presentations, at the beginning or end of a slide to give you guys a break and start fresh, and I forgot that I had a time limit. Anyway, we'll jump back in right in the middle of this slide. So we're talking about what happens when brands lack trademark symbols, and I've got this Amazon example, and we talked about already some small companies just might not want to jump through the hoops that are required to claim a particular brand um, as their own, and so they don't protect them with trademark symbols. That's not the case for Amazon, but it's a possibility. So what I was saying right before I ran out of time before is that companies with registered trademarks are not legally required to use trademark symbols in their brands, right? So even though Amazon, I'm sure, has the name Amazon registered with USPTO as a trademark, there's no legal requirement for them to use that R with the circle around it to claim this particular combination of letters. Um, so why might a company do that? Well, companies, particularly companies that are doing business across national borders, right? So across international borders. Uh, so so um, companies that do business all across the world. Sometimes, and this is what I suspect is true for Amazon, although I don't know for sure, sometimes leave the trademark symbols off of their logos because it's possible that their particular brand is not registered in countries through which their products pass, right? So you could imagine, you could buy something on Amazon, you got an Amazon box and it's got Amazon plastered all over it. And if there's a possibility that that Amazon box crosses through a country where Amazon does not have the name Amazon as a registered trademark, some other little business could actually start, claim the name Amazon, register it in that company, and then have, what's effectively a frivolous lawsuit, but a lawsuit nonetheless, against Amazon for violating, that little local company's trademark in that foreign country. So a lot of times, companies will leave their the registrations symbols that are with a circle in it off of a trademark if the company is doing international business and fears that they might be subject to a lawsuit in some other country because they're violating trademark of some smaller company that's operating just within that international jurisdiction. So that's, I think, what's going on with this particular version of Amazon's logo, but that's just kind of a generic reason why a company might not use the R with a circle on it to avoid a frivolous lawsuit if they're doing international business. So even if you see a particular combination of letters, a brand that's associated with a company, and you don't see a TM or you don't see an R with a circle around it, you cannot assume that the brand is not a registered trademark. So please always check with USPTO before assuming that a brand is clear to use, especially if you've seen that particular combination of letters already used by some other company, even if it doesn't have the registered trademark symbol next to it. Okay, so moving on in our lecture, this is just sort of a subtopic along the exact same lines that we were just talking about. So companies might choose to leave the registered trademark symbol off of their logo if they're worried that they're going to infringe on the trademark of some other company in their jurisdiction. So can different companies trademark the same brand symbol within the United States? Well, if you think about it, this happens all the time, right? So the answer is yes. There we go. The answer is yes. So I just grabbed this particular example. Can multiple companies trademark the same brand? Well, absolutely, right? Because we have Delta, Delta, and Delta. What are these deltas? Well, the first one is Delta Airlines, the second one is Delta Faucets, and the third one is Delta Dental. So this is an airline. This is a manufacturer of sinks and plumbing stuff for houses, and this is basically a dental company or dental insurance company. So, and you can see right that every single one of these brands has the registered trademark symbol, right? So these are all brands using the exact same combination of letters, the exact same word, very similar logos that are all registered trademarks with the USPTO. So how did this happen, right? Because this seems like these brands, which are basically the exact same word, right, would be infringing upon each other's registered trademarks in the jurisdiction of the United States. Well, it turns out that a USPTO federal trademark protects a company's brand only in a particular sector of the overall market. And that sector must be specified by the company at the time that the trademark is registered. So Delta is in the aviation industry, right? Delta Faucets is in the plumbing industry, and Delta Dental is in the dental and insurance industry, right? Those are three very different market sectors. And so it's possible for all three companies to operate with the exact same name, very similar logos, and not infringe on each other's trademarks. Now, if all of a sudden Delta Faucets wanted to start making airplanes, then we'd have a problem, right? They would somehow have to change their name, or do something to differentiate their products from the products produced by, or the services provided by, Delta Airlines, because then Delta Faucets making airplanes, or providing passenger air travel, would be infringing on Delta's trademark, Delta Airlines trademark, in that section of the market, right? So you got to be very careful if you're a conglomerate company that has multiple different kind of divisions and products, that your trademark isn't accidentally infringing on some other company that already has a registered trademark in that particular space in the market. But yes, it's possible for, in the same jurisdiction, for different companies to have the same brand, provided they are in different sectors of the market. Okay, so let's talk about some trademark related business issues. So what does a trademark kind of do for a business, and what things do you, as a business owner, or as a chief engineer, chief technology officer, something like that in a business, sort of have to worry about with respect to trademark? Well, the first one that I've listed here is corporate identity and associated mark selection, right? So this is now, in our 21st century world, with domain names, .coms and so forth, this is actually a really big deal, because you have to come up with a name that is unique enough that it doesn't violate anybody else's trademark, but also provides some individualized, unique corporate identity. So a lot of companies spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out what they should be called, so as not to violate somebody else's trademark in a similar competing sector. You also have to worry about the use of your brand and the fact that it's trademarked for advertising, marketing campaigns, promotions, and these are promotions that include contests and sweepstakes, right? So your brand is associated with your company, and you always have to portray that brand, especially if it's a trademark or a registered trademark brand, in a positive light, in the way that you want your customers to see and view your company. So it's quite important to make sure that a brand that you've taken the time and effort and money to protect is always portrayed in the positive light that you want it to be portrayed in for your customers, so that they can see your company in a positive light. So that's also important. There also are federal and state retail and customer protection statutes and regulations, right? So, and this leads into the next one, which is unfair competition. So once you have a brand and a registered trademark, you are protected both at the federal and sometimes at the state level, against other people, other companies, kind of impersonating your company by stealing your brand, stealing your trademarks, stealing the name of your company, and impersonating your company, or selling, crummy, inferior products in the name of your company to try to ruin your business. And so it's important to be vigilant of, once you have a brand that's trademarked, that nobody else is using it. And if somebody else is in fact using it, you need to intervene immediately to create, a cease and desist situation, so that you have a documented record of asking somebody who's in violation of your trademarks not to use those trademarks anymore. And once you do that, then you have a legal case against them if they continue using them. Then there's publicity rights. and labeling and packaging, which we'll talk about a little bit more on the following slide, these both feed into something called trade dress, and I put it in air quotes because I want to define it. So trade dress is the visual appearance of a product or its packaging that signifies that the product's comes from a particular source for that product's customers. And the example of trade dress that I've experienced recently that I love, that I think is a really good example, is a startup company called Weatherflow, which is actually out of Daytona Beach, so it's not too far away in Florida on the Atlantic coast. So this is a product that is essentially a residential weather station. And Weatherflow's kind of business model is they make this weather station that is kind of sleek and can be placed in a residential context without violating HOA guidelines, for example. And so I actually purchased one of these because I'm very excited about weather stations, and I set it up in front of my own house and actually got approval from my own community's HOA to have this thing in plain sight sitting out in front of my house. So the thing that's so cool about it is that it looks like a functioning weather station, right? It's got the radiation shield, and it's got the wind velocity detector, and it's in this very cool kind of weather station-y shape. So it looks like a weather station, right? So that's the trade dress of the product. Even the box itself, right, has the same silhouette on it that looks like a weather station, but also looks kind of cool and sleek and neat, and something that you could put up in a relatively regulated HOA regulated residential community without evoking the ire of your neighbors. And so, like I said, I actually purchased one of these, and I went through this process where I went down to the HOA meetings in my community, put this thing up, took pictures of what it would look like, kind of hidden in the canopy of a tree, and you can see it's cool and sleek and looks nice, but it's also high enough above the canopy of the tree that it can collect weather data free and clear. Here it is, kind of in the context of the tree, and unless you really knew what you were looking for, it's effectively invisible up there because it's sleek and has no moving parts. And I was able to get my HOA to approve me putting this thing in front of my house, even though our community has some pretty strict guidelines about what can go in front of a house and what can't. This Weatherflow weather station was approved to go up in the tree in front of my house. And so I think this is a really cool example, as I said, of trade dress, because this company was very cognizant when they created this particular shape. They wanted something that looked like a weather station to those of us who are weather station enthusiasts, but also was sort of clean and slick, and kind of innocuous looking, so that if it was placed in front of a home in a well-regulated residential neighborhood, that nobody would be offended by the placement of this thing, right? So like normal weather stations are sort of big and bulky and have all these moving parts and stuff, but this thing looks really slick and cool. It just looks like something that belongs in front of a house with no questions asked. So anyway, Weatherflow clearly spent a lot of time not just coming up with the name Weatherflow and coming up with a couple of symbols. This is one of their symbols that represents their brand, but also thinking about like the overall shape of the product, and how the overall shape conveys that it is both a weather station, but also aesthetically acceptable to be placed in a residential community. So anyway, I think this is like a really cool example, a recent example that I've encountered of product trade dress. Okay. So moving on, I want to share with you a couple of my own personal experiences with trademarks. So I want to talk about an academic example, and I want to talk about a business example. But I'm looking at my time and noticing that I'm almost up to 15 minutes again. So I'm going to stop here or pause here, give you guys another break, and then when we'll come back, we will talk about my personal experience with trademarks. So enjoy your break, and I will see you in a little bit. Thanks.